It's late afternoon on the 1st of October 1949 in Beijing, China. Although few around the globe are yet to understand it, this is a moment that will go down in history as one that changed the world. The son of a peasant farmer is about to announce to the planet that its most populous nation now has a people's government to be run by the Communist Party of China. A century and a half earlier, Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte of France had suggested letting the Chinese giant sleep, because when it awoke, the world would tremble. Today, Mao Zedong's historic words from Tiananmen Tower will be a sign that Napoleon's giant is stirring. 60 years on, and the world is under no illusions about China's sleeping habits. Parades like this one in 1984 established China's military might and organization in spectacular fashion. In 1949 too, there is to be a parade following the founding announcement. The parade is in itself an important statement, but there is no guarantee of how it will go. It'll be the first of its kind, and the participants have to overcome a number of tricky obstacles to mount it successfully. This is the story of how they did it. As Mao Zedong and his fellow communist revolutionaries soak in the atmosphere and adulation of the crowd, they have every reason to look and feel elated. For this represents the climactic moment in a titanic struggle for control of China that has been going on ever since the abdication in 1912 of Pu Yi, the last emperor of the Qing dynasty. The intervening period has seen a veritable galaxy of armed factions jostling for power throughout China. The invasion by the Japanese in the 1930s has united many of these diverse groups. And by the time Japan surrenders in August of 1945, there are only two main contenders left slugging it out for the great prize of governing China. The favorite would appear to be Chiang Kai-shek, leading the Kuomintang Nationalist government, or KMT, with their capital in the southern city of Nanjing. But in the other corner is one of the great figures of world history, Mao Zedong, and his totally dedicated and idealistically motivated Communist Party of China. Mao has the backing of the Soviet Union, and Chiang the support of the Americans. At times, the two have united to repel the Japanese. But by 1948, they are locked together in a bloody endgame that can see only one winner. By the end of January 1949, Mao's communist forces are gaining the upper hand. When a KMT general surrenders Beijing, then known as Beiping, without a fight, the signs are not looking good for Chiang. It's the symbolic seat of imperial power, and on the 3rd of February, Mao's People's Liberation Army, or PLA, enters the city. Buoyed by the news, Mao holds a conference in nearby Shibaipo to plan a push for final victory that will now concentrate on the major cities. Over the next few months, the idea for a grand victory parade will emerge. Along with the parade, it is decided to make some other symbolic changes. To define themselves as different from the perceived corruption of the previous KMT regime, they'll change the name of the country itself, switch the nation's capital back to Beiping, and rename it Beijing. They'll also create a new national flag and anthem and adopt the Christian calendar. The details will be worked out at a conference in June prior to holding the big event. Shortly afterwards, Mao arrives in Beijing and famously tells Zhou Enlai that they are now about to sit the imperial exam. He moves into a house in the mountains just to the north of Beijing to ponder the future and start preparations for the day he'll announce a new regime that the whole world will be forced to accept. The 199th is an experienced army unit that has distinguished itself in both the war against the Japanese and the civil war with Chiang Kai-shek's Kuomintang forces. They're particularly excited because they'll be the only infantry unit to be inspected and will see Mao Zedong himself. Today, the Chinese PLA is world famous for its precision drilling and spectacular parade skills. But it's a tradition that had yet to be developed by 1949. During the war years, the People's Liberation Army, or PLA, had held some minor reviews and parades. But these events pale in comparison to the scale of the parade envisaged for the founding ceremony of the new republic. The initial plan for the 1949 event consists of 3 parts: a founding ceremony of the Central People's Government, a grand parade of the army, and some parade activities of the general population. Exactly how to conduct the parade becomes the central issue. Mao articulates what's at stake, declaring, "Because it is the first parade after the founding of the state, we must make it a success." The first question is, where to hold the event? The area around the old imperial palace, or Forbidden City, is the obvious choice. Although in a state of disrepair following the fall of the Qing dynasty and the war with Japan, for centuries it has represented the center of power in China. The monumental gate barring access to the Forbidden City is known as Tiananmen Tower, or the Gate of Heavenly Peace. The structure had been used for important proclamations such as imperial enthronements or marriages, and provides the ideal venue to symbolize the advent of a new era. The people are clearing weeds, preparing the area for the founding event. But before Mao's grand parade idea can be realized, there is a lot of work to be done, and only 3 months to get it organized. It's soon clear that the alignment and formation of the 199th Infantry Square will be critically important. Whilst the unit was busy fighting the war, formal drills were rarely conducted. Now, for many of the soldiers, such training is more difficult than actual combat. How they will look on parade is also important, and most of their equipment and weapons have been captured and are of varying models. To standardize their weapons, all Type 38 rifles seized by other units are immediately reallocated to the 199th Division. And there are other, less obvious problems to address. Training people to control their bodily functions is one thing, but for the cavalry unit, that's not an option. There are nearly 2,000 horses, and as they parade, they'll leave an ever-growing collection of droppings. And the parade ground will also be slippery. Tank Gongchen was the very first tank captured by the PLA and has participated in a number of campaigns, acting as vanguard in large-scale assaults on heavily fortified positions. For its outstanding service, it is given the name of Gongchen, or Meritorious Service Tank. Now it will take pride of place in the Combat Car Division's Tank Square. Mao's vision for the Grand Parade is to achieve something that is, in reality, largely symbolic. In effect, he'll be telling the Chinese people and the outside world that the game is over, that he has won and there's no point in further conflict. To make this work, he must show that he's totally in control, and he has 2 areas that are of concern. He has almost no Navy or Air Force to speak of, so what he does have must be presented to appear more substantial than it really is. With the Navy, he has one prize asset. From 1944, Li Guanying had been studying at the Britannia Royal Naval College in Dartmouth, England. In May 1948, he and other Marines of the Kuomintang Navy studying overseas sailed the cruiser Chongqing back to China. In February 1949, Li and more than 600 officers and soldiers take over the ship and delivered the largest cruiser of the Kuomintang Navy into communist hands. To highlight the Navy, Li is chosen as the flag bearer of the very first square of troops to be inspected at the upcoming founding ceremony. The Air Force situation is more problematic. Actually, there's a real possibility of an aerial attack on the proposed event. As recently as May that year, Kuomintang planes had launched a surprise attack on a Beijing airport. The air raid by the Kuomintang Air Force unsettles the population of Beijing. In response, the central leadership decides to organize an air combat unit to protect the city. By August, the PLA's first air squadron is established. Initially, this Air Force unit is not ordered to participate in the founding ceremony. The condition of the squadron is very poor, and there are only a few planes that are airworthy. So instead, their brief is to prevent any attack by the Kuomintang Air Force and to ensure the safety of the ceremony. But then, one day in late August, Ni Rongzhen, General Director of the parade, unexpectedly questions Air Force representatives present at a working conference of the founding ceremony. The participation of an air force would undoubtedly make the parade more spectacular, but getting it organized is another matter. There is only one combat unit available, and it has barely been formed. To make matters worse, the founding ceremony is only 1 month away. A week before the scheduled date for the Grand Parade, a major conference is held with representatives attending from all over China. They'll elect the new government members and also vote on the new national flag and anthem. During the meeting, planes are suddenly heard overhead. Mindful of the air raid in May, many of the representatives are scared. Conference Chairman Zhou Enlai advises them not to panic. After emergency repairs and trial flights, only 17 planes are considered suitable for the flyover. And there's another issue. The primary task of the air squadron is to protect Beijing from aerial attack. But they're planning to use all the planes available to participate in the formation flight. Feng Hui now proposes a bold but risky idea to the General Director of the parade, Ni Rongzhen. Ni Rongzhen finally approves Feng Hui's suggestion and in fact decides to arm several planes in case of an air raid. It remains, however, a top-secret operation. Only the pilots with armed planes will know, and even other squadron members are kept in the dark. Finally, the great day arrives. The troops to be inspected have gathered outside the entrance gate in a long queue. Some have even arrived at the designated location the previous evening. And now a huge crowd of excited onlookers starts to assemble in Tiananmen Square. This is the one sentence that the world is familiar with. But Mao has more to say. Firstly, a message to the Chinese people. Although few can understand him, the crowd reacts to some key words and the timing of Mao's delivery. After effectively claiming victory for the benefit of his domestic audience, Mao's final statement is directed to the outside world. At 4 p.m., just after Mao has declared the establishment of the People's Republic of China to the world, Commander-in-Chief Zhu De and General Director of the parade Ni Rongjian arrive to inspect the troops, who are ready to proceed into Tiananmen Square. The inspection ceremony is followed by the march past procession. The Navy Square appears first. Some of them are really army soldiers wearing Navy uniforms to bolster the numbers. Others, the officers and soldiers who staged the Chongqing mutiny. Unfortunately for Li, as he lowers the flag 45 degrees in salute, a gust of wind rolls it around the pole. It's to be the only slight glitch of the day. Now it's the infantry's turn. It takes only a few short minutes to walk down the 350-meter road in front of Tiananmen Tower. But to arrive at this fleeting moment, these men have shed blood, sweat and tears, both in battle and now in preparing for this parade. It's a moving moment for Mao Zedong and the other leaders of the new China. Commissar Li Buda of the 199th Division is marching at the front of the square. To see Chairman Mao, even Dong Laifu, the driver of the meritorious tank Gongshen, is compelled to sneak a sideways peek at the tower, although he is driving the tank square's leading vehicle, requiring total concentration. As soon as the combat car unit has rolled past, the planes start to appear. As they fly past, some observers count them and determine that there are 26 in the formation. But there are really only 17 as originally planned. In fact, the 9 fighters that passed first secretly circled behind Tiananmen. The 9 fighters join the inspection formation again, but none of the foreign reporters present realize how they have been deceived. In the communiques they send afterwards, they report that overnight the Communist Party of China appears to have its own air force of at least 26 planes. In all, more than 200,000 civilians gather on Tiananmen Square to witness the founding ceremony, avidly analyzing the various forces and weapons on display. With the Civil War just ending, the new People's Republic of China has no diplomatic relations with Western countries. As a result, only Soviet-Russian reporters are invited to take photos and film at the momentous event. So the fledgling republic had achieved its first major propaganda coup without serious mishap. The marching troops had kept their formations, their weapons looked uniform, The tanks hadn't collided, and nobody was stepping on horse droppings. And the Air Force had miraculously increased in size. Onlookers were suitably impressed by the spectacle. It's all been an elaborate bit of theatre, but they've pulled it off. At the end of the day, Mao's face says it all.